Good afternoon, everybody.
Good
My name is Deborah
afternoon.
Jackson. I am the CEO of Erica Denise Jackson Foundation, and I want to welcome everyone for joining us this afternoon for continuing our diabetes class to learn how to eat, live, and move. So we're going to open up with a scripture with Sister Norma,
hmm
and she's going to pray us in.
Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Okay. My scripture for today is, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That's Jeremiah 29 and 11. So we're going to pray now, Deborah. Uh,
Go ahead and pray. And after that,
okay.
Katie, you can take it over.
Oh, Lord, good afternoon. I come to you thanking and praising you for another day. Thanking and praising you for waking us up this morning and bringing us on the Zoom line again. Lord, we thank you for Katie taking her time and teaching us how to eat and how to survive. Lord, I ask you to bless her, bless each and every one that's on the line today, those that can get on and those that are unable to get on at this time. Just bless us and keep us focused. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and thank God.
Yes.
So I'll go ahead and start with some common misconceptions of cancer. Cancer is not contagious. It is not caused by an injury, such as in a bump or a bruise, right? I've heard majority of time women say like, oh, I got hit on my left breast, and then I found a bump. The bruise turned into a lump, and that's how I developed cancer. So that is not the case. Cancer always runs in the family. That is also not the case. You could be the first person um, to be diagnosed with cancer. And that is something I also wanted to start off with. I was in college, um, getting my undergrad in public health, and we were talking a lot about health disparities and cancer. Um, and I remember going home telling my dad, "Oh my goodness, cancer it's runs it's so common in Latino communities and African American communities." And I was like, "We're so lucky that it hasn't hit our family yet." And my dad was like, "Yeah, we are very blessed." He's like, "It's not luck, it's blessed." I'm like, "Okay." And it's almost like I jinxed myself because that same year, actually the following year on in January, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. He passed away a year after. Then after my dad's sister passed away with kidney cancer. My uncle just he survived cancer. He had stomach cancer. And after that, it was like a ripple effect. I was just like, whoa, there's cancer everywhere. So you could be the first one um, that gets diagnosed with cancer, but it is very common, especially in communities of color. Cancer may be spread after biopsy or surgery. That is also not the case. And exposing cancer to air will cause it to spread. So we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what is cancer. So cancer is a type of sickness that can also be treated with medicine, but you cannot catch it from someone else. So it begins in the cells of our body. So the body is made up of many types of cells, which are the body's basic building blocks. So it's very normal for cells to grow, divide, and produce more cells to keep the body healthy. But when this process goes wrong, it's almost like an error occurs, and it could create a mass of tissue called a tumor. Not all tumors are cancerous, so you don't always have to be frightened that, oh, I found I have a tumor. Some of the times they're not cancerous, but they will go ahead and remove them, either or. Tumors that are cancers have cells that are abnormal, and what happens is that they divide out of control, and the cells invade and destroy the healthy tissues in our bodies as well. So instead of the normal process of dividing and dying, cancer cells will continue to grow and form new abnormal cells. So it's just out of control. There are many types of cancers that hurt different body parts. So depending on where the cancer origins, that's the type of cancer that you are diagnosed with. So if it starts in the lungs, it is considered lung cancer. If it starts in the breast, it's considered breast cancer. There, and you basically could get cancer in every body part, any body part. But there's obviously more common ones that we'll go ahead and talk about today. So what causes cancer? Cancer can be caused by many things, including genes, lifestyle, and environment. We do not know all the causes of all the different types of cancers, but we will focus, and we do focus in this program on making healthy lifestyle choices that could help us reduce our risk. A lot of times, we cannot make, we have no control over our genes or our family history, and sometimes we don't even have control over our environment, right? Like, for example, we live in California. California, there's a higher risk of air pollution that could increase our risk. You know, there's a lot of things that we cannot do too much to make a huge difference, but we could focus on making healthy lifestyle choices. And again, it is not contagious, and it is not caused by a bruise or an injury. So who can get cancer? About 80% of all cancer diagnoses are in people over 55 years and older. People who smoke, eat a healthy diet, and are physically inactive have a higher risk. And again, you'll hear this very often throughout the entire program, right? But no matter how old you are, it's a good idea to make healthy choices, right? So as it is more common in older adults, but you are seeing it also in adolescents and children as well. So cancer does not discriminate. How can you get tested for cancer? So screening can prevent cancers such as cervical and colorectal cancer. It basically allows for early detection of precancerous cells, and they could be removed before it turns into cancer. Screening can also detect cancers of the breast, colorectal, cervical, prostate, or oral cavity, and skin at early stages, as well as lung cancer. Early detection has been proven to reduce mortality, and it can also prevent and detect early by screening accounts for at least 1/2 of all new cases. So a lot of times when we hear the word cancer, we think death, right? We think something scary, negative, but there are about over 14 million cancer survivors in the US. So that is a great news, right? As I mentioned, early detection does save lives. Many people live long, happy lives with and even after cancer. So we're going to go ahead and go over the different types of cancers. The most common cancers in men and women. For men is prostate, followed by lung and colorectal. For women is breast, lung, and colorectal. And the cancers that cause most death in men will be, men and women will be lung, followed by prostate cancer for men and colorectal. And then for women would be breast cancer and colorectal. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in the US. Just as a FYI, right? Men could also be diagnosed and develop breast cancer, but it's not as common. About 1 in 8 women in the US will develop invasive breast cancer during their lifetime, and 2 out of 3 breast cancers are found in women 55 and older. The risk factors for breast cancer, obviously, like I mentioned, being a woman puts you at higher risk. Family history, having high breast tissue density, never having children, having one's first child after the age of 30. So there are a lot of health risk factors, a lot that we cannot control, but you know, we could manage our weight, we could be physically active, and have a healthy diet. The screening guidelines for breast cancer is basically having for women who are 50 to 74 years old should be screened for breast cancer every 2 years. Just keep in mind, there are 3 things that you want to do, okay? Even if you're not at the age of mammograms, you want to include your monthly breast self-exam, your yearly clinical exam, and in addition, once you becoming of age, you include the mammogram. Okay, so that is 50 to 74. Again, these guidelines and these suggestions, including the age, are general guidelines and screening recommendations. It does not take in consideration family history. So it's very important that you talk to your doctor because these guidelines could change depending on your family history. Um, so women,
You have some questions.
okay,
Hold on for a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt. You have some question in your chat,
okay.
and I also have a question whenever you address that. Go ahead, Sister Coleman. It was a
Yeah,
Coleman
do you want to ask the
that put
question
the
or do
chat
you
in.
want to me to look at the chat? Let me.
You can look at the
For
chat, please.
if you want me to ask it out loud, the first question was, or is, what is it about never having children that can increase the risk for cancer? And then the second one is, what is it about having the first child after 30 that can increase the risk for cancer?
Okay, so I cannot answer that specifically, but I know it has to do with hormonal changes.
Okay.
Okay, so I can't give you the map of exactly scientifically the reason, but it does have to do with hormonal changes in the body. So even for example, women that have that are in their menopause stage in their lives have a higher risk of developing certain cancers depending on the exposures that they're having within that age range that all have to do with hormonal changes. So even consumption, there's one here too, of recent use of oral contraceptives that puts you at risk as well. So it all has to do with hormones. I hope I answered your question. So
Yes, thank
moving
you.
back, Deborah, did you have a question?
Yes. Now, I started getting my mammogram in 1986. So that made me, at that time, I was 32 years old. And I get mammograms every year now.
Yes, the guidelines are constantly changing. The recommendations, if your insurance does not give you a problem with it, do it every year. They're constantly changing the guidelines. Again, it also depends on family history or if they found any lumps in the past in your breast, and they'll just have they'll just want to take a look at your breast more often. So it also depends on that too. Every individual will have their own process, and
Yep.
I'll go ahead and talk about that too when we talk about cervical cancer as well.
Because there was one time I had to get mammograms done 3 times a year,
Yeah.
plus ultrasound
Yes, and
at that
I'm glad you're
age.
sharing that. So, for example, my mom has to go every year, and I believe it's her right breast. It has more dense tissue, so she constantly has to go get an ultrasound. So she does her mammogram, and then she goes in and does an ultrasound in her breast. There's been a year or two where the doctor says, they look good, you're fine. We'll go ahead and do that in 2 years, and we'll follow that procedure again. So it really all depends. And now that we're talking about how everyone has their individual process of getting screened, that's also very important for breast self-exam. It's very important that you know your breast, you know what you need to do to get screened for breast cancer. So doing your monthly breast self-exam is the first most important step. Then it's your yearly clinical exam where your doctor performs the performs this breast exam, and then your mammogram. So you're doing all three simultaneously if you're at that age. If you haven't reached the age of mammograms, you're still doing your breast self-exam and your clinical exam, your clinical breast exam. So moving forward to your breast self-exam, since it's very important, you could perform it standing up in the shower. If you have larger breasts, you could do it laying down. It is important that you perform your breast self-exam the same time in the month. If you get a menstrual period, you're doing it 7 to 10 days from the first day of your period. If you no longer get a period, if you're on birth control and you're irregular, or if if you already irregular, if you've always been irregular, then what you do is you choose a time of the month, a day and time of the month, and you perform it the same time every month. So I give this recommendation to everyone is perform your breast self-exam when you pay your phone bill or your mortgage payment. I mean, if I always say mortgage payment, but there's people that are retired and said, I paid my house a long time ago, so good for you. So let's do the phone bill because you'll never get rid of that phone bill. Seems like you say, I'm gonna keep this phone, it's good phone, I'm not gonna go buy and upgrade my new phone, but for some reason 3 years comes, you lose your phone, you break it, and you end up getting a new phone, right? So that phone bill is always going to be there. So when your phone bills due, perform your breast self-exam. The reason why I say choose the same time of the month is because your breast changes. Hormones causes your breast to change. And I don't want you to get scared and say, what am I feeling? It feels different from last week, right? So get to know your breasts. Breasts are lumpy. Okay, they are very lumpy. They're not as smooth. So once you get to know your breasts, you'll know exactly what you're feeling. Okay, and you're not only feeling your breast, you're also looking for different signs. So you want to also do this in front of the mirror and see if there's any changes that have occurred that you could bring to the attention of a doctor. So again, women between 40 and 49 years old should talk to their healthcare provider about the risk of breast cancer and whether they should get mammograms early. Again, the general guidelines, right? So I'll give you the scenario. If my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer at 52 years old, I'm not going to wait till I'm 50 to start my mammograms. I will talk to my doctor and I should be allowed to start my mammograms 10 years prior to my mom's diagnosis. So I could already at 40 start talking to my doctor, perhaps doing ultrasounds, perhaps whatever he suggests, because every doctor will give you a different suggestion. But at 42, I should start my mammograms early because my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So you see how every person will have their own different um, screening deadlines. So definitely talk to your doctor and really know your family history. That is extremely important. So we'll go ahead and jump to cervical cancer. So cervical cancer is caused by the HPV. HPV is the human papillomavirus. I cannot say it. So HPV is transmitted through sexual contact. So basically, if you get your cervical screening, the HPV that is detected could have been acquired many years ago. The reason why that's important to understand is because a lot of women will say, I'm not sexually active. I don't need to get my cervical screening. My husband passed away many years ago, or I'm not sexually active. Well, if you've ever been exposed, you should basically, if you've ever had a sexual partner, then you should always continuously get your screening depending on your lab results. Because whatever, if you ever are diagnosed or if they ever find anything, it's not something that happened the day or the year of. It's something that you had been exposed to many years ago. There are many different types of HPV that can infect the cervix, the vagina, and the vulva. There are low risk type that could cause genital warts, and there's high risk type that could cause precancerous polyps or cancer in the cervix. The reason why we say precancerous, and this is also very important for you to understand, that early detection does save lives, especially when it comes to cervical cancer, which is very similar to colorectal. And the reason why I say that is because during your screening, they could find precancerous cells. It's basically like a huge warning, letting the doctors know, hey, there could be something that could go wrong here in the future. So they go in there and they remove those precancerous cells, which reduces your risk tremendously for it to not develop into cancer. So okay, so here are a few questions that I always get. If I have HPV, does that mean I get cancer? In most cases, HPV infection will just go away naturally. Your body fights it off naturally. Only women with persistent HPV, where the virus does not go away or are at high risk of developing cervical cancer.
Now, Katie,
Yes, Deborah?
me myself, I don't have HPV, but because I don't have a uterus, I make them every year. I make them do a survey on me. They take whatever scan or whatever they take, they do a biopsy, and they send it off to make sure that I don't
You
have
had a
cervical cancer.
hysterectomy? Is
Yes,
that what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah, I
Okay.
had one, so I don't
Okay,
have a
so
uterus.
that is also, yeah, so if you've had a hysterectomy, majority of the time they will leave the cervix, so that means you still have to get your screening. If they have removed your cervix during the procedure, then you don't have to get the cervical cancer screening. It's not right. You don't need it. Okay, so those are just two things to keep in mind. Okay.
Yeah, so I would just mention that's what I have done every year.
Okay.
I go in and they do a biopsy,
Okay.
and I'm tell y'all it's painful.
I cannot agree to that because I haven't done that. But I'm sure that it's worth it, Deborah. It gives you peace of mind to know that you are good and healthy after you get those lab results, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are the risk factors of HPV? The infection with types of HPV, women who have begin having sex at an early age are higher risk, right? Many sexual partners. But I will be honest with you, it could take one partner to be exposed to this virus. It is very common. 8 out of 10 people have been exposed to it in their life. Women whose partner has had more than one sexual partner, women who have had sexual transmitted diseases, so that puts you at risk of developing cervical cancer because you're immune suppressed, right? Women who do not have pap tests obviously are at higher risk. Smoking, long-term use of oral contraceptives. So what are the guidelines for cervical cancer screening? It should begin at 21. There are 2 screening tests to prevent cervical cancer. Again, I really like the term to use prevent when it comes to cervical cancer, right? Because you could reduce your risk in certain cancers, but you can actually prevent this one if you do early, if you get your screening, because they find precancerous cells. So it really does prevent you from developing the full-on cancer. There's the pap test and there's the HPV test. Women between ages 21 and 29 of age should receive a pap test every 3 years. It's every 3 years depending on your results. If your results are consecutively normal, then it's going to continue to be every 3 years during that time, 21 and 29. There could be times where your pap test could come back at normal, so they will request for you to do it yearly, until you get back to normal results, and then it'll jump back to 3 years. So it really depends on your results. And then women between 30 and 65 should be screened with a pap smear every 3 years and an HPV test every 5 years, or a pap smear and an HPV co-test every 5 years. And again, these are all guidelines depending on your results if they have been consistently normal. Okay, if you have had an abnormal test, these guidelines recommendations will change according to what your doctor suggests for you. For you, cervical screening should stop. As this should stop at if you're over 65 with normal results and no history of abnormal results or serious diagnosis in the past 25 years. That is what are the guidelines? But if your doctor is okay and you're 67, 70, and you could still get your pap smear and you want it and your doctor's okay with it and your insurance pays for it, I say keep doing it. Reason why I say is because if they find precancerous cells at 67, 69, 70, why not remove them, right? It's definitely a personal choice and you definitely have to talk to your doctor. Those who have had a total hysterectomy, removal of the uterus and the cervix, do not have to get the pap test. But if they have left the cervix, then you still continue getting these tests, these screenings. Okay, there is an HPV vaccine, right? It helps prevent cervical cancer by providing protection from the high-risk HPV virus types that causes 70% of cervical cancer. You can significantly decrease your chances of getting cervical cancer if you get the vaccine before the initial contact of the initial sexual contact. And the benefits of the vaccine decline with the increased exposure of HPV. That is the reason they offer these vaccines for both girls and boys at an adolescent stage of age. The best time to give this vaccine where the body is has a better response to it is for girls and boys ages 11 to 12. Um, that's what the findings have showed. So they usually offer the vaccine during that time. You could still get it up to when you're 27, but as I mentioned before, the benefits of the vaccine will decline if you have been exposed to HPV. And there is a lot of stigma attached to this HPV vaccine. Parents are very hesitant to offer this vaccine to their children because of the connection of it being tied to a sexual transmitted disease. But we're doing a lot more work to make sure that we remove that stigma, because we're not condoning our children to understand what the concept of this is, but it's just an additional protection for them before they become an adult. Okay, so we're gonna jump to talk a little bit about testicular cancer. It is the most common form of cancer of men of ages 15 and 39. So it's one of those cancers that is most common in younger in men. Testicular cancer is less common among older and middle-aged men. The risk factors is undescended testicles, even if corrected, family history, HIV infection, being of a certain race and ethnicity, and body size, so being overweight. Nice part about recommendation and cool part about testicular cancer is they usually found as a result of symptoms of a person is already having it, but you could detect it yourself, right? So you could perform your monthly self-exam. And here in this slide, it kind of shows you how you can do that. Not sure if we have any men today, right? So I won't go over the details of that. But if you do have a husband or a partner, I think that is a good reminder. You guys could probably, synchronize and say, hey, we're paying our phone bill today. And then you could remind your partner to perform his testicular self-exam, and you could perform your breast self-exam. As silly as it sounds, it is a good reminder to work with your partner to stay on track of these exams. The reason why I say it is because majority of the time that women go into their doctors because they found a lump in their breast is because it's found by their partner. So that only goes to show that women lack self-awareness of their own bodies, and that their partners know, recognize, and see their partner's body more than they see themselves. So just keep that in mind. You have to know your body and feel comfortable with yourself. Prostate cancer. The prostate is a gland found only in men. So yes, women cannot get prostate cancer. A healthy prostate gland is the size of a walnut. This is a cancer most often diagnosed in men in the US and in California. About 1 in 7 men will develop prostate cancer during their lifetime. It is the second leading cause of cancer-related death in men in the US. About 1 in 38 men will die of prostate cancer. And studies have also shown that many older men who have died of other natural diseases has had prostate cancer that never affected them during their life. So it's that common. Risk increases with age. About 65% of all prostate cases are diagnosed of men age 65 and older. Personal and family history of prostate cancer also increases your risk, such as having a father or brother who have been diagnosed with prostate. That basically doubles your risk of developing this disease. So if you've had family history, it is extremely important that your doctor knows about this, because definitely this would change the guidelines and the recommendations of where you should start getting screened. And also being African American descent, that puts you at high risk. There are for some reason, prostate cancer is very common in African American men, and they have the highest mortality rates. So diet high in saturated fat puts you at risk of red meat, high fat dairy products, and having a diet low in fruits and vegetables. Again, red meat and processed foods also increases your risk of prostate and colorectal cancer. So like I said, having meatless Mondays, right? That's a new hashtag. Having more vegetarian options is it's it's recommended to include in your diet. That is the reason why I try to focus a lot on showing participants to make dressings, to eat salads, you know, try different, appreciate nuts. That's a good source of protein. Appreciate beans, appreciate hummus, appreciate all these different sources of natural plant-based proteins that you could add to your diet, because having a high diet in red meats and processed meats does increase your risk in many diseases, right? Including prostate and colorectal cancer. So just keep that in mind. And besides, everyone knows how to cook a chicken and steak, and right. A lot of the times we we believe that um we don't know how to make a healthy salad, delicious salads, right? We have them in this closet where they're boring, and we don't appreciate the colors and the different flavors that they provide. So I'm sorry, I just went on a little tangent, but you guys understand, right? And obesity obviously puts you at risk. So screening recommendations for prostate, again, they constantly are changing. They're just recommendations here. You definitely need to talk to your doctor about when you should start screening. And when I say you, I'm talking about the men. If there's any, I don't think there's any, but your partners, your brothers, right, your fathers, any, all the wonderful men in your family. Men who are 55 and 69 years old should make an individual decision to be screened for prostate cancer with a prostate specific antigen, which is called a PSA test. Good news, man. Good news. It's just a blood test. Okay. That is the initial screening for prostate. Um, Depending on your PSA test results, then you would be recommended to do a digital self exam, which is a DRE, which is basically I'm sorry, it's a finger in your rectum where they check to see the size of your prostate, right? This could be and should be offered annually beginning at age 50 to men who have a life. So it depends on your results of your PSA and your DRE. They'll go ahead and schedule you to do this on a yearly basis. And then men at high risk, such as African American men and men with strong family history of one or more degree relative diagnosis of prostate cancer at an early age, should begin testing at age 45. And even 45 is a little late. So depending on that family history, you should start sooner. Okay. Again, these are general guidelines. If you've had a father who was diagnosed with prostate cancer at 45, you should start talking to your doctor at age 30, 35. 35 is when you should start screening. So just keep that in mind. Do not wait for your doctor to bring these exams up, especially for men. Us women have to really, schedule these screenings for them. Um, don't wait for your doctor to offer you these screenings. Really talk to your doctor and say, hey, I've heard there's a PSA exam that I could do. I could perform, right, to check my for prostate cancer. So bring those conversations up. And then for men at average risk and high risk, information should be provided about what is known and what is uncertain about the benefits and limitations of early detection and treatment of prostate cancer, and make an informed decision about testing. So we're going to go ahead and jump to colorectal cancer. Cancer that begins in the colon and the rectum is called colorectal cancer. It includes all the large intestine. Approximately 135,000 people are diagnosed with CRC annually, and about 50,000 die from colorectal cancer. It usually begins it's as a small growth or a polyp in the lining of the colon or the rectum. Again, early detection does save life and prevent cancer, just like cervical cancer when it comes to colorectal. Why? Because they could literally find polyps that are precancerous. They could go in there, remove them before it turns into cancer. And depending on your history, depending on your colonoscopy results, that would determine how often you'll be getting screening. So the risks here again are very similar to all the other ones that we've talked about. You know, we are overlapping the same health risk, right? Obesity, being physically inactive, smoking, heavy alcohol consumption. But I will highlight a high diet in red meat and processed meats puts you at risk. Inadequate intake of fruit and vegetables increases your risk. Okay, so those are the highlights we want to focus on. Um, all right, it's because our food does put, depending on what we eat, our food does increase our risk of certain cancers such as prostate and colorectal. Okay. Um, what are the screening recommendations? Beginning between the ages of 45 and 50, men and women should be screened for colorectal cancer. There are many test options for colorectal cancer screening. There's a stool-based test, which we call a FIT kit. It's just a stool smear. You could even do it at home and mail it out to the lab. Um, those stool-based tests are a good start if you're scared or hesitant to do other screening. What they do is they check for blood, and depending on those results, they'll recommend further testing. The best exam that I would recommend that you should start off with is a colonoscopy. Again, I cannot tell you, you know, it's great. Go ahead. It's not a big deal. I've never done it, but I have heard it's a little uncomfortable, right? You have to have this drink, clear out your colon the day before. So there's a few steps of preparation to get the colonoscopy, but just keep in mind, depending on your results, you don't have to do it that often, right? It could be every 5 to 10 years, depending on your results. Um, and they have a clear um, um, visual exam of checking the entire colon and the rectum. And again, might be uncomfortable, might be something not to look forward to, but once it's done, you don't have to worry about it for another 5 to 10 years, depending on your results. Colorectal cancer is very similar to cervical, where it's a very slow growing cancer. So they could just keep a look at and be like, hey, you know, we found something abnormal. We're going to go ahead and check you again in 2 years or so. It also depends on your doctor and your results. We're going to jump to skin cancer. Skin cancer is actually the most common cancers, and the biggest risk factor is sunlight exposure. It is not that common in African American community, so that is really good, right? To protect yourself, again, these are a few recommendations: avoid the sun, wear hats, use sunscreen, and avoid tanning beds. It's recommended that you use a minimum of 30 SPF for protection. Here are a few suggestions as well that you could perform. It's called the ABCDEs. Basically, it's just a little reminder of how to check for irregularities or you know, cancer growth in your body. So you're checking your moles or birthmarks. So A means for symmetry, seeing if one half of the mole is has changed from the other half. You're looking at the borders to see if there's any irregularities, any changes. You're looking at the color to see if the colors have changed throughout time, something you might bring it up to your doctor. You're also looking at the diameter to see if it has grown, and E means for evolve, to see if it has evolved throughout time. Those are all things to keep in mind, to talk to your doctor, to just say, hey, you know, I want you to go ahead and check this mole on my back. I noticed that it's, you know, changing. It doesn't feel the same as it felt in the past. So you could go ahead and take a look at that. Again, it is the most common cancer, but guess what? It's the most curable. People see it, you detect it yourself at early stage. Lung cancer. So lung cancer is the #1 killer in the U.S. #1 cancer killer, excuse me, in the U.S. About 80% is caused by smoking. Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among both women and men, and people die more of lung cancer compared than colon, breast, and prostate cancers all combined. And to protect yourself, obviously, will be do not smoke and do not use tobacco products. I haven't included here, but also vaping. Avoid all of those new modern gadgets that people are now using. Hookah, all of that as well. So there are screening available for lung cancer. The eligibility to get screened for lung cancer is very limited and very narrow, and it's only given to people who have had a history of heavy smoking and smoke now or have quit in the past 15 years, are of ages between 55 and 80. And then there's 3 types of screenings available, depending on your eligibility. And once you get, they'll go ahead and give you a suggestion of what they can offer you. Again, you also should talk to your doctor if you have been exposed to secondhand smoke for a long period of time. You might be also eligible to get this, the lung cancer screening as well. We are running out of time, but I love this presentation, so we'll go ahead and jump briefly on talking a little bit about some cancer disparities. So here we're showing this graph here of number of new cancer cases and deaths each year. So you do see here that for women have a high, white women have a higher diagnosis of cancer, but unfortunately, African American women die more often of cancer. And then on the blue side, which we're looking at males, we see the African American men have the most new cancer cases, and they also have the highest mortality. Okay, so just to keep that in mind, that's why screening is recommendations. It does save life. It's early detection. Here we're looking at another data showing the same thing. Here's all the cancer rates by race and gender. We do see that African American men do have the highest cancer diagnosis, and Black women will have the second highest, which is right underneath white women. But unfortunately, both African American men and women have the highest mortality. Here showing all the different diagnoses of cancers. Looking at only African American individuals, we see that African American women have higher diagnosis of breast cancer, and they do have the highest mortality rate of passing away of breast cancer as well. And then for men, they have higher diagnosis of prostate cancer, and both followed by lung.
Katie, I want to add something.
Go ahead.
Now, my daughter died with breast cancer. But her breast cancer in the lungs, the nodes in her lungs, it came from medication.
Your lung cancer, you say you've had breast and lung
No,
cancer?
no,
I did not catch that. I'm sorry.
I said my daughter
Okay.
died from breast, lung cancer, and brain cancer.
Oh,
I said her cancer came from medication.
I think I don't know. You know, I feel like every individual has their story. These are just very
No,
general
it's not a story. It tells you when you take the immune medicine from having heart transplants and everything.
Okay.
It tells you
Those are
cancer.
side effects that she had from other medication. Yeah, like I said, yeah, you know, depending on, you know, certain diseases, certain medications does increase your risk of certain cancers, just like, oh, I thought you said, just how, you know, even taking a long period of contraceptives also increases your risk. So, you know, everything you have to be careful and consider, you know, when you're taking treatment for one thing, consider the side effects that you may have, you know, it might lead to. So I'm so sorry to hear that, Deborah. Again, there's a lot of things we cannot control, right? But that's why I'm always going to go back to nutrition and physical activity. Those are the 2 things that we could focus on and reducing our risk. And I'll be honest with you, you could be doing everything right, and still be diagnosed and end up with cancer. And I'll even give you my personal story as well, Deborah. My dad, I grew up, my dad being extremely physical active. He played soccer, he took us hiking, we had bikes, um, we had rollerblades. I mean, I had a wonderful childhood with my dad, extremely active. He loved dancing, he knew how to dance so well. He loved dancing. Um, he was just such an active man. And he did not smoke, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. So I'm not sitting here and telling you that if you eat healthy and you are physically active, that you'll never be diagnosed with anything, right? That was not the case for my family and my dad as well. Um, and then we also have the opposite scenario, right? Where you have the old man that you know from the neighborhood who smokes and stands outside with his beer and smokes every day. He's 95 years old and he still drives, right? And he does everything wrong. You're like, what's going on? So you have both scenarios, right? You have that person that does everything right and everything goes wrong, and you have that person that does everything wrong and lives till he's 100. So just keep that in mind, but just know that you have to do what's right for you. And and just, again, it's a combination of everything, right? Eating healthy, being physically active, and going and getting those screenings for early detection. So here's another reminder. What we eat and how we live affects our risk of cancer. Evidence suggests that 1/3 of the cancer deaths can occur in the US each year and are due to nutrition and physical activity factors, including excess weight. So make sure that you make healthy food choices, maintain being physically active, and most importantly, determine all these health determinants to reduce your risk. About two out of three Americans are overweight and obese in the U.S. So keep that in mind. We do need to, I want to say shrink as a country, right? And maintain that weight off, right? You don't want to just, do this crazy diet, shed all these pounds, and then what's next, right? Or even during this program, right? Don't stay motivated during this program and lose 10 pounds. And then once this program's over, you're gonna go back to your old ways. No. So that's why this program, we focus on making healthy lifestyle choices that you can maintain even after the program is done. One thing I like to talk about too is, not sure if you guys knew, but City of Hope has actually done research on, they have conducted research focused on what foods can help the immune system and block hormones that help cancer spread. So if you don't mind me, Leah, while I talk a little bit about this presentation, can you share the link in the chat where they could find all these superfoods as well as recipes? So City of Hope has actually done studies and have done research on what we call the power of superfoods. They have done research on grapeseed extract, blueberries, and cinnamon. So grapeseed extract is known to fight breast cancer. Blueberries is known to fight triple negative breast cancer. So basically what they're saying is that including these foods in your diet, um, all these superfoods have properties, cancer fighting properties. And cinnamon is wonderful. It stunts tumor growth, kills blood supply to tumor, and lowers your risk of developing diabetes. Okay, so add cinnamon to your oatmeal, add cinnamon to your coffee, add cinnamon in your cereal, whatever opportunity you have, you add cinnamon. Blueberries, that's why I like making blueberry smoothies. I have frozen blueberries. I add blueberries to my smoothie. That's actually what I give my daughter as a snack. So I have frozen blueberries and I have fresh blueberries. The frozen are for me, and the fresh ones, anywhere I go, I get a little bit of blueberries for her, and that's her little snack. So I don't get none of those baby rice cake food items for her. No processed foods for her. She's too young. Processed foods ruined your stomach, your bacteria in your stomach. So it kind of just, makes you not healthy, right? So for my baby, I don't want to give her processed foods for at least the first 2 years. I'm 10 months going strong. So let's hope that I don't crack, right? And then there's other foods that I did not mention in this slide, like pomegranate and mushrooms. I think City of Hope has done research on, and I think I'm missing a few, but Mireya shared that link in the chat. Feel free to find it. You could also Google City of Hope and Superfoods, and they will specifically talk about all the superfoods that they have done research on and include amazing recipes. With that being said, do any of you have questions? I know this is a very long presentation, so thank you for being patient.
I have a question. What kind of cinnamon will help produce the results mentioned in the PowerPoint? And can one just buy ground cinnamon that comes in the small container, like in the seasonings and spices section in the store?
I believe you can include both, include whatever cinnamon, and I don't think as I read in the past, it doesn't mention a specific cinnamon. I have two types of cinnamon at home all the time. I have the stick cinnamon and the powder cinnamon. So, including having both would be good. But powdered cinnamon should be good too. That's actually powdered cinnamon I add to my oatmeal, and then the stick cinnamon I use it to make my coffee. So I feel like it pulls the cinnamon like a little better for the coffee. So it's up to you.
Thanks.
Any more questions? It's just when it comes to foods, just make sure you read the ingredients and that doesn't have anything extra, right? Because you could find powder cinnamon and it might have sugar added to it, and it's because of the manufacturers trying to sell you something that's sweeter. So any time you go to the grocery and I say, "Oh, cinnamon's healthy," just there is so many different brands out there. So you have to be careful and make sure that you're only buying cinnamon. And you look at the nutrition food label and you check the ingredient list. And the first ingredient or only ingredient should say cinnamon. Any more
So,
questions?
Katie, so what you're saying about Black America, that we are more prone, and it's funny that everything goes on, we are prone to cancer, diabetes. What is it? I know you said we eat a lot of red meat, but some people do, but a lot of people don't, and they still get cancer.
Yeah. So, Deborah, it's not about just eating red meat. That is, the disparities that African American face, people of color face, it has a lot more to do than just food. Food is where we focus on because that's where you can make those changes to reduce your risk. But when it comes to the health disparities that African Americans face, or Latinos, or people of color in general, has a lot more to do than just food. It has to do with where you live, the education you receive, the care that you get, the access to care. So there's a bigger picture. And Deborah, and if you would like, we could actually maybe in the future do a presentation on talking about social determinants of health and how all there's so much more than just looking at physical activity and foods that puts
I
people
think
of
I
color at
think
risk
I'm
for certain
already
chronic diseases.
I think I'm already scheduled to do one in April.
Okay, so
But the,
that's
the only reason I had said that because I'm gonna use myself as an example.
okay.
All all my daddy people, the girls, from my brother, I mean from his brother's side, all of us, and I said all of, but not me, they all died with over cancer. Every one of them. So that's why I said it can't always be food that we eat. It's got to be hereditary.
Oh yeah, I started the conversation saying that there's genes, environmental, and which is family history, environmental, right? Exposures of different endocrine disruptors and toxins that increases our rate, carcinogens, right? And then there's also our lifestyle. Um, all of that plays a huge role in putting increasing your risk of certain cancers. And it's unfortunate that being a person of color does increase your risk of a lot of more diseases. like as you guys learned last week during your heart disease presentation, right? They have the highest
Mhm.
mortality rate. You guys, African Americans have higher rates of hypertension. It's just there's a lot more than just food. Definitely, I agree with you, Deborah. But we definitely could focus on making and modifying and changing our health behaviors because that's
Mhm.
all we have control over. We don't have control over family history and our genes. We don't have control over sometimes even the exposures we have in the environment. But we do have control and could modify our health and change our health behaviors to live healthier lives, to reduce our risk. Okay, that's including our nutrition, being physically active, and early detection, getting your screenings.
So see, back in the day, black folks didn't die with a lot of cancer. Um, we used to call that a white man disease.
Yeah.
And now it seems that it's catching up with us,
Yeah, it's almost like even Latinos, people that live in that come from other countries, Salvador, Guatemala, and I'm telling you because of my family experiences. You live in these poor countries and you don't die of the diseases that you come here in the US and adapt this culture and the lifestyle, and you basically increase your risk of all these diseases. It's just a little bit of everything. But again, we could literally have this conversation and talk about this for hours, days, and weeks. So we'll just leave it as that, Deborah. So I can show you guys my recipe. We're not gonna seems like we're not gonna have time for an exercise, but I do want to show you the recipe that I shared with you all this week. Um, it is a baked ginger peach chicken. I really like this recipe because you're including and plain fruit into your protein. Again, I try to avoid cooking with chicken and meat for this program because everyone knows how to cook chicken and meat. And I want to show you guys how to make these delicious salads and dressings to make your foods very colorful and vibrant. But I'll go ahead and show you what I made today. And what I made today, and I set it up in a plate, is to show you how your plate should look like, right? It's just a reminder of making sure your plate is half your plate is fruits and vegetables. You have a small size of a protein on your plate and a small size of grain. So give me 1 second so I can go ahead and show you guys.
Can I mention something while she's busy? I had a colonoscopy when I was in my 20s. And then they did another one a few years ago and they found a polyp that time. And so at 49, they want to do them yearly now.
Okay, so did someone have a question? I think I was walking away when I heard someone say about something, but yeah.
Yes, I did. I actually did. Just real quickly, going back a little bit, you talked about finding tumors and tumors being benign or malignant.
Yeah.
And my question is it possible that like a first diagnosis, you have a tumor and they say it's benign, but it can develop into something that's malignant?
The error of when you, like I mentioned, when you have tumors or when you develop cancer, right, it's like an error that occurs in your body. So it could happen at any time. It could happen that you have a tumor and they do a biopsy and it's not cancerous, and a month later when they go in there they might find cancer that they couldn't detect. So it could. There's all possibilities, and I'll even give you the example of my father. My father actually got biopsied 3 times in the lungs, and they kept saying, we see the smoke, but we can't find the fire. And all the biopsy kept coming out negative, negative, negative. And it turned out to be cancer. He was even seeing lung specialists, where they were saying maybe he only has COPD. And we were like, no, he does not have COPD because his oxygen levels were good. So there's a lot of different scenarios. I'm not a biologist that could tell you exactly what goes on behind the scenes of why that happens. But, the body just sometimes we have no control over what happens to our body and the mechanism behind it. But if anybody has maybe some input or an experience similar to that, where maybe a tumor wasn't cancerous and then became cancerous? No? Okay. So, but the misconception of that is that biopsies does not cause the cancer. Okay, so a lot of times I do hear that it was the biopsy that led to that. That is not the case.
Mhm.
So the food that I cooked today, as I mentioned, I made the it's a baked ginger peach chicken. I flavored it with the sweet peaches. And then I made rice, and I also white rice with frozen veggies. So I included veggies in my grains, and I also made broccoli. So that was my vegetables for this dinner. And I just want to show you how your plate should look like. Okay, so this is exactly, I'm not sure if you guys have a clear view of what it should look like. So half your plate should be vegetables. You should have a small portion of protein, which is just one chicken thigh without the skin. I removed the skin. And then 1/4 of your plate should also be grains.
I'm not
Again.
seeing you.
Huh?
I'm not seeing you, Katie.
Oh, it's just a plate.
I mean, I'm not seeing anything on my screen. It's just
Oh,
black.
it's because I move computers. So, okay, there
Oh,
you go.
there you are.
Yes, sorry. But this is exactly what it should look like. Do you guys see the plate? So this is just an example of what a meal when you're serving yourself should look like. Again, a lot of times we go for the protein first, and there is no space for the vegetables. Start off by including vegetables into your plate, then the protein, then the grains. I also wanted to show you, I don't like brown rice, so I don't buy brown rice. I don't get half my grains when I eat rice. Okay, that's just my preference. So I get my whole grains, because remember, the recommendation is making half your grains whole grains on a daily basis. So I make sure that I get my whole grains through the bread that I purchase and oatmeal. Okay, so that's how I get my whole grains, my daily whole grains. I don't do it through rice. So just, that's just me showing you an example of doing what works for you, what with your likes. So you don't go off and buy brown rice because Katie said you have to have whole grain, and then you end up not eating it or tossing it out because you don't like it. So you want to explore different products and see what works for you. The trick is,
Started buying, sorry to interrupt. I started buying tortillas instead of bread with flaxseed.
okay, if that works for you, then that's wonderful. I actually forgot to mention about tortillas too. I buy whole grain tortillas, and I always have to have regular tortillas too, because my mom takes care of my baby here and she complains. So she likes her regular tortillas. But just with tortillas, be careful. You have to be careful with bread. If it says, whole grain with flax seeds or spinach and all these fancy heart healthy advertisements in the front, make sure that you're reading the nutrition label and the ingredient list. Again, as a reminder, the ingredient list should start off, if you're trying to purchase a whole grain tortilla, make sure that the first ingredient says whole wheat, 100% whole wheat or whole wheat. Should not say bleached or enriched. Okay, because all these fancy tortillas that are in the market that are trying to sell you because they're healthy, doesn't necessarily mean that they're whole grain. It could say whole grain, and if it isn't enriched or bleached, it basically false advertisement, and there's no agency really regulating that. So it's your responsibility to make that judgment and to watch what you're purchasing. Do you have any more questions? And that recipe I send you, you could explore with it, right? Make changes to it, whatever you like, whatever works for you. So I make sure I remove the skin. I didn't cook with the chicken skin. Any questions?
No, but it looks good.
It is good. This is my second time making it. So I like I mentioned, I even learned from the program myself. I've had participants suggest recipes. and then I try them, and then I'll incorporate them to the next program or even a few weeks later. So if you guys have any recipes in mind that you guys would like for me to share or explore, or maybe you guys could share, that's also a good opportunity for us to learn from you. Any questions? If we have no questions, then I'll go ahead and hand it over to Deborah, because it is 2:10. You know, the cancer presentation does run a little longer, and I know you guys have tons of questions, but I do want to respect your guys' time. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Deborah to end the program.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, what I want to say, I am having a seminar next month on the 27th for colon cancer and for kidney. And if you would like to participate, just let me know so that I can send you the link. I will be posting it on ericadenisejackson.com, and I will also be putting it on Facebook for anyone would like to participate. I mean, these classes are very educated for us and for us to learn more and keep going. And even though I thought I pretty much knew everything about different things because of the illness that my daughter went through, and I went through it. I was in the hospital from the time that Erica was 6 weeks old, died. So I learned by me being on these classes and giving them, they are educating me more and more. And medical change every day. So it's good that we educate ourselves. And I know every time we get on these seminars, it's always us. We're always the number one. And until we start educating ourselves and educating our husband, boyfriend, or whoever, we're not gonna beat this. So it's time for us to start being a winner and not being the number one. Let's try to get us down where we at the bottom. I asked one lady to pray us out today. I don't know if she's on the line or not because this was Black History Month. My bad. So if not, you mind praying me out, Sister Richardson?
Miss J, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see you.
I'm
Okay.
here.
Hey, I put Sister Richardson on the spot. I know she was there. No, she didn't.
Oh boy.
All right, then. So don't forget, next week, the same time at 1:00. And I really enjoyed Katie. You're doing a wonderful job. Keep it up.
Thank you, Deborah.
All right, so go ahead.
Okay.
Pray us out.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, I come before you in the name of Jesus. Lord, thanking you for yet another time that you've allowed us to come together to gain more knowledge of what it takes to eat right and be healthy, Lord. And I thank you. I thank you for the information that Katie is bringing to us, Lord. It is so good and wonderful. And the knowledge that we've gained, Lord, I ask in the name of Jesus that everyone takes the information and shares it with others, Father. Health is important. And I thank you, Lord, that Miss Jackson has the desire to want to give this information to others, Lord, so it can be shared. And I just thank you and praise you, Lord. And as we leave this seminar today, Lord, but never from your presence, Lord, help us to stay focused on what is important, Lord. Our life, our health, our strength, and most important, you. And Father, I just say thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the weekend. And just remember that making healthy choices, adjusting your lifestyle comes a long way, and the journey to being healthy should be a pleasant one. Okay?
Yes.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good one.